Hey everyone, it's Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the show where I talk to writers of all sorts of different styles and backgrounds, and we have a lovely conversation and we get to know each other a little bit. And at the end, we make up an impromptu short story together. And so when I say writers of all backgrounds, today's a great example because today I talked to somebody who you probably don't know him so much for his fiction writing, although that has been taken off greatly in the last few years. But you probably know him because he's a guru of all things fitness. I talked to Dr. Ian K. Smith, known to the world at large as Dr. Ian. So he's the author of several #1 New York Times bestselling fitness books. He's currently the solo host of the nationally syndicated Emmy award-winning TV show The Doctors. He served as the medical diet expert for 6 seasons on VH1's Celebrity Fit Club. He used to be the medical correspondent for NBC News. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. He's been on Oprah, The View, Dr. Oz, The Talk, Larry King Live, CNN. So yeah, he's got credentials. He's a highly smart man, highly committed person into his craft, whatever that craft is at the time. And he's always had a love of reading and writing, and he wrote his first novel when he was still in college. But just in the last few years, he started getting back into novel writing, and they've done quite well. His latest book is Wolf Point. It's the Ash Kane book #2 in the series. And his first one was The Unspoken. So he's been very prolific, and he just the series just got optioned for a TV show. So he's going to be this tremendously huge suspense writer that we'll all know him for, rather than his fitness books, probably in the near future. So we had a fantastic conversation. You know, I really gleaned a lot of good information from him, and just hearing about his discipline, how he schedules his fiction writing and his nonfiction writing, and all his other commitments that he has. You know, his belief about outlining versus, kind of pantsing like what I do. So anyway, it was really fascinating to talk to. And at the end, we took a sentence from the Stephen James book, Every Deadly Kiss, and we crafted a pretty creepy little short story about a car in a ditch. So I hope you enjoy. I certainly did. This is my conversation with Dr. Ian. Good. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to be met, and nice to meet you.
I appreciate you doing this. And I have to say, I was looking at your Wikipedia, and if it's to be believed, you're about a year older than me, and you look great. So I need to we are men of a certain age, and I think I need to read your health book so I can
It's called one word, GYM, the gym.
Yeah. So I'm pretty good. I work out 5 or 6 days a week.
Oh, okay.
I've got a home gym, and I go to the rec center, and I do a lot of mountain biking. But I mean, I'm not doing hour-long workouts every day.
Nah, you don't need to.
Because that, as you get older, as you probably know, it starts to hurt, and it takes a long time to bounce back from things. So
you don't need all that stress on your joints. Trust me.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So I don't have to do a lot of jumping around and not super heavy weightlifting.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. There's a lot I could talk to you about. You're a bit of a Renaissance man, but this is a writing focused show. So I'm particularly interested in your writing, but I'm sure we can delve into other areas as well. So whatever you want to do, but
I'm open.
Okay, right on. Thanks. And also congrats on your upcoming or your recent release or your upcoming release.
Oh, Wolf Point is my recent one. Yeah, just last week.
Last week. That's exciting, huh?
Yeah. It's always, it's my 21st book, but every book is like a maiden voyage, and you're excited about it just as you were the first book. So Yeah, it's, you spend a lot of time as a writer by yourself putting things together, not knowing how it's going to be received. And so there's always a little nervousness, but there's also excitement that you're kind of giving birth to your creative project.
And it's a very different aspect from writing fiction and nonfiction and self-help. Obviously, I would imagine there's a certain sense of vulnerability with the fiction, in the sense of, like you just said, I don't know if this is good. I don't know. I know what people have told me, and I know it's getting published, but I'm vulnerable because this is my imagination and this is my emotion. So do you have a sense of that a little bit more so with fiction?
Yeah, I think you have more on the line personally when it comes to fiction, because it's your creation. So it's
Right.
about how your mind thinks, how your mind imagines, how you're able to put words together. I mean, it's more artistic. Fiction writing is more artistic. And so, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of difference of opinion because people look at art differently. Whereas nonfiction is, okay, here's my diet. This is what works. These are ways to increase your metabolism, to lower your calorie count. There's not much of a personal investment or personal exposure when you're writing a lot of nonfiction, unless it's a memoir, of course. But with fiction, it really has those elements where this is what I think is a good story. And you may say, this is an awful story. Or, there's certain chapters in the book that I really like when I read them. I think that the writing is good. I mean, writers think about their own writing and do they deliver? And so, but you may say, I think the writing is really awful. It's stilted. It's, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think that when it comes to writing fiction, you tend to have those types of vulnerabilities, but that's the fun part of the process, right? Is that,
It is. Yeah, completely. And I preach a lot about the value of rejection and the value of criticism, because you don't have to accept people's criticism, but I fully believe you should listen to it and you should let it help inform how you view things. And so when you're writing fiction, do you workshop anything, or is it just, I'm in a room alone and when it's done, and then I give it to my editor and I sweat waiting for that first for those first comments to come back?
Yeah, well, I pretty much the latter. I mean, I am in a creative workshop by myself. No one reads it, not even my agent, until I'm finished with it. And so once I finish my manuscript, I then send it to my agent. My agent reads it. My agent says one of several things. Either one, this is really good. It's ready to be submitted to the publisher. Two, it's good, but you may want to consider this.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that's the case, then I go back, work on it, and resubmit it to him. Or three, he could say, this is way off the mark. Thank goodness I never had that happen before. But he could say, this is off the mark. Kind of, you got to start all over again. So that's never happened. Thank goodness, knock on wood.
I've had that happen. It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't want that feeling whatsoever. But actually, let me back up for a second. I have had a book rejected. Actually, I'm kind of I got to go back in my history.
So you wrote the book.
I wrote the book. It was a 2-book deal. I published the first book. I submitted the second book, and it got rejected. Totally rejected. And it was like a slap in the face. I was. This
is a novel.
This is fiction. Long time ago, and I just couldn't believe it. I was not expecting that. I mean, I was expecting, okay, you may want to develop this character, maybe change this plot point. Boom. So that's a gut check, and it's only happened once, thankfully. But in general, I work by myself in my creative lab, submit it to my agent. And then when it comes to criticism, I typically listen to my agent, my editors. Mm-hmm. I don't really have readers before I publish. I have a circle of friends who I give the galleys to. Yeah. Right, the advanced copies for them to.
But they're galleys; they're not changing.
No, they're not. It's not changing. Now, what I don't do is I don't read reviews. I think criticism is good, very good, but it depends on where the criticism is coming from. And I don't get into Amazon reviews and all this kind of stuff, Google review.
Right.
Okay, the literary trades, my agent and or editor will send them to me, or they'll quote them, and so I got to see what they said. Knock on wood, they've all been beyond my expectation. By the way, they've compared me to some of the greatest mystery writers of all time, and I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? I mean, Kirkus and Library Journal. But I don't read reviews. I don't think, this is just my opinion, I don't think reviews in fiction from readers can do much good to the writer, because it's subjective. Sure, could there be pearls of wisdom and suggestions that could enhance your writing? Yes. But what do you have to wade through to get to what that pearl is? To me, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I generally agree with that. I think there are some things so I'll give you a good example. So my latest book, I killed a dog, and which is usually seen as like a big no-no. And this
It's a good title.
Exactly.
Well, automatically you think, what? Like, where is this going? You know what I mean?
So so this dog dies in this book, but it totally happens off camera. You don't even know who the dog is, and it's just a very minor scene. And I got so many trigger warnings on Goodreads. They're like, I would never read this book if there's animal torture and cruelty. I'm like, there's none of that in there. But that informs me a little bit of like, okay, that doesn't mean I won't do that again, but it makes me think a little bit about sensitivities that I maybe hadn't fully considered. But yeah, you can't go down the path of getting mired in all of your reviews, because you'll go crazy, because there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones, and you have to be true to yourself, I think.
But here's the difference though. Now, the example you gave is great, but that's not an example of your writing. That's an example of your approach or your packaging.
Right.
If someone says, I don't like the way you write because you don't describe things well, or you do this, that's more in your craft. And that's where I think you have to have your style and your voice. And that's how you do it, because you like to do it that way. And those who are going to like it will like it. Those who aren't going to like it, they won't like it. And they have tons of other books they can read.
Yeah, you have to be true to your voice and true to yourself. I mean, there's a lot of writers I talk to who do kind of think about their market when they're writing. I don't think that's a bad thing to do. But when I write, I'm writing kind of for myself. I'm like, this is interesting to me, and I hope it resonates. But because otherwise, it's not fun. Otherwise, I'm just trying to follow a script, because I don't outline or anything like that, and that would drive me crazy.
You are 100% correct. I 100% could not agree with you anymore. I don't do outlines. I write my book first in my head for a couple of months, so I have a blueprint of where I'm going. I meet my characters. I get a sense. I'm very visual when I think of my book. So I'm listening to them. I'm looking at them. I'm looking at their mannerisms. I'm figuring out kind of the basic journey of the plots. And then I sit and write. I don't outline, because I think that the fun part of writing is to be extemporaneous, to be free, to be able to go wherever you want to go left and another left and a right. And I think that sometimes if you overly script yourself, whether it be content because you're trying to appeal to a particular audience, or an outline that you got to go this block by block by block, that to me as a writer takes the joy out of it. And I think that part of the fun is not always knowing where you're going to go.
I mean, that's life, right? Life is unscripted. And, I've tried to outline before, because actually, if I know what I'm going to write, it's a lot easier, because the physical act of writing is now fairly easy for me. But like, you start to follow an outline, and if you're constantly asking yourself, which I do, what if, while you're writing, you think of so many better ideas or more interesting ideas. I've killed off major characters on a whim, just like, well, what if I did that? What would happen? And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, and you go back and change it. But it's great fun to be like, oh, what if this person just got shot right now?
Well, I killed off The Unspoken. So my new book is Wolf Point.
Right.
The book before that was called The Unspoken. And I killed off a character I really liked. I liked this guy. And it was sad, actually, the process of killing him off was very sad for me. However, he had to go because his death added more texture to the story, added more twist to the story. So yeah, and I hadn't thought of killing him in the beginning, by the way. That happened when I was writing. I said,
Right.
geez, maybe he should die too, actually. And I killed him.
But the fact that you got sad during that, I think is important, right? Because I think that emotion, like if you're feeling that emotion, I think that means you're doing something right because you're connected to that character. And I think, I think we all get asked what's better, plot or character development. And the answer I think is both, but none of them are interesting without that emotion. Like you want people to mourn that character that you killed off and be kind of pissed off at you about doing that because that means that character was important.
You are absolutely correct that the fact that I was doing it and knew I was doing it and knew where I was going and still felt emotional about it was a good sign.
Right.
And when the book got published and I did several reading groups, online book club groups and talking about the book, almost all of them talked about, did you have to do that? They were upset about it. They were sad about it. And that is the emotion that you want to evoke in your readers. And sometimes you want your readers to be upset at you.
Right.
Sometimes you want them to disagree with what happened. I think because that brings them into the book. That makes them emotionally entangled in the book. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, you don't want to do too much. You don't want to do stuff that's just going to piss them off gratuitously. But those kinds of things, I think, make the reader more attached to what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. So I want to go back a little bit, just not all the way back to your childhood, but certainly where I'm curious to know, you've gone to about 400 different Ivy League schools. I went to one. I went to a hotel. I went to Cornell. I went to the hotel school.
Cornell. Yeah. Of course. Best one in the country. Hospitality.
Yep. And so what was was there an interest, where was the inflection point in your life where you're like, I'm really interested in language and communication and writing and whatever form that takes? Did that happen before you went to college?
I've always loved books since I was an elementary school student. Really, I've always loved books and I've always loved science and math. I was a rare student.
Did that come from your family?
I think that the science and math came from my family saying, hey, you got to do well in these subjects. Mm-hmm. And I think the books just came from loving story. I just loved story as a kid. I was a very curious kid. And so it was rare for a kid to like both. Usually you're either a math and science kid or you're this kind of
right, left brain or right brain, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I was both in the beginning, loved books, participated in the MS Bookathon every year, won it a couple times.
Oh, right.
Read the most book. And I missed those.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. Go to the library and just pour through these books and raise money for a good cause. But so that's always been in me. But the math science side of me wanting to be a doctor always took it was always more public facing because I wanted to be a doctor. So that means you're going to do well in math and science. So that was kind of my path. But what a lot of people didn't know was that I'd always harbored this love of books, this love of the written word. And I was a voracious reader, not reader because I had to read, because I just loved reading. Mm-hmm. I think it was my high school English class, my high school English teacher, and her love of books and her analysis of books and fiction really kind of made me feel like, wow, this is really cool. Like, wouldn't it be cool one day to be the writer, the one who created this work that people are analyzing and talking about? I just thought it was a cool idea. I still never thought I was going to be a writer, by the way, but I just thought it was a really cool prospect. And then when I was in college, by the way, I remained steadfast to be a doctor. I was on that course from early on. But then when I was in college, I just was reading John Grisham's The Firm.
Yep.
And before he became famous, before the book was a big international mega seller. And I just loved the fact that here I was, a young guy, basketball player, lover of books, and I was riding around in my little car in my hometown, trying to read this book between red lights, at stop signs, trying to get one more page in.
Isn't that crazy?
And I couldn't stop reading this book. Literally, that's how bad I had it. And when I finished, it was so cathartic. I went through so many emotions in that book, and I just said to myself, man, how cool would it be one day to be able to write something like that, where the reader just is so engaged that they can't stop reading it. And so when I got back, went to college, I was on break at the time. When I went back, I just started writing for myself, really. My first novel, which actually became a novel, The Ancient Nine. And that was a book I had started writing way back in college.
Huh.
And I reached a point in so fast forward, I had a lot of success, obviously, with my nonfiction and health and diet books. And I finally just said to my publisher, listen, I write fiction. They're like, what? You write fiction? Yeah, I write fiction. I read fiction. I love fiction. And so basically, I just took a stand and said, I want to publish fiction. And it wasn't easy as far as convincing them, because people tend to only see you in
Right.
one way.
You were in a bucket.
I was in the bucket, and that bucket was really tall with a lid on it. And I had to use my leverage to some degree, because I had, made the house a lot of money.
Yeah.
Use my leverage to say, I want to publish fiction. And that's really when I broke out and started saying, I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to do it. And now I'm going to do it every year.
Isn't that funny that you talk about it almost like it's something to be ashamed of? Because I totally know exactly what you're talking about. I'm proudly announcing I'm a fiction writer. I'm not going to hide it any longer. I mean, yeah, when I started writing very serendipitously, I had zero education with writing. And so of course I didn't know what I was doing. And so I was ashamed of it. I didn't tell anybody about it, because I was embarrassed by it. And I found an agent behind the scenes. And finally, when I got an agent, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll tell people I'm writing. But it doesn't matter who you are or what you've accomplished in life. There's so lack of ego with writing, because I'm constantly thinking I'm not good. And almost to a T, everybody I know is the exact same way.
Yeah. I feel like, it's interesting you say that. How do I see myself? I see myself as a work in progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm bad, but I don't think I'm the best.
Right.
But I think I can get there. And that's just that's my optimism in life. Like, I feel like, if I keep working at my craft, if I keep working hard, I'm going to get better and better and better, and I'm going to make it. And I have to think that way, because that's what drives me. That motivates me to keep editing and thinking and practicing. It's just what it is. So I've never seen myself as bad. I've seen myself as inexperienced. How about that?
Right.
And that if I get more experience, like kids playing sports, like, I say to kids all the time, practice is different than the actual competition, the game on Friday night. So you can practice all you want, but you also have to be able to know how to do it in a game when the pressure is on and the game's on the line. And so if you don't play a lot of games, but do a lot of practicing, then you are inexperienced when it comes to actually performing in a game. So it's not that you're bad, because you do have the skills you developed in practice. It's that you don't have enough game experience. And once you learn how to use those skills in the game environment, bam, you're going to do it. So I apply that to myself when it comes to writing.
Well, and I think it's a very realistic and logical way of looking at it. It's not just optimistic. I mean, I think it's good to be optimistic, but I think it's actually true that you can continuously get better. I mean, you look at there are plenty of octogenarian writers who are at the top of their game. And I think that's one of the best things about being a writer, unlike many other professions, is the best could always be yet to come. You don't know. And it might not even be, your breakout might not even be your best critically acclaimed book, but who knows? And that could happen when you're 50 or 30 or 80, whatever. And I love that idea of like, okay, maybe this next one, who knows what's going to happen to it? Maybe this is my thing.
That is the beauty of writing.
Totally.
It's very synonymous and analogous to Hollywood. The reason why people go to LA and they starve and wait tables and live in tiny apartments the size of a closet and live check to check is because they know it takes one break, whether one script to sell, one part to get, one thing can skyrocket their career. And when it skyrockets, that's a huge upside. So they're willing to suffer and struggle through all that morass to get, up here. And I think that's the beauty of writing. Like, you never know which book is really going to hit. And really make it big, depending on what you think big is, but really make it to give you a big audience and to put you on that track. And so I think that the beauty of writing is, and the hopefulness of being an author is, it's maybe just one book away. And so
Right.
you got to keep doing it.
Totally.
You got to keep doing it.
But you
Right.
still have to love it, right? Like,
Yeah.
like there's time, because there are times, as you know, that writing's brutal. Like, it's just not fun. There's days where it's like data entry, or you're just second guessing everything that you're doing. And if you didn't love it, you're not going to get through all of that. And you're not going to get through, for a lot of people, all the rejection. My first 3 books didn't sell, for example, but I just kept writing because I'm like, I feel like I'm a storyteller and it's fun for me. And yeah, it'd be great to sell a book. And that all comes in time, but you'll never, I talk to a lot of writers or aspiring writers, and they just struggle to just get through that first book, because I think at the end of the day, they don't actually love it. They don't, they know it's hard, but the passion's not there.
Yeah, I say this about anything in life.
And fitness is a good analogy for that too.
It's a great analogy. If you are lucky enough to find something you're passionate about, and you can pursue that passion, and that passion can be, quote unquote, your job or your work, then you are in an unbelievable position, because what you're doing every day is something that's driven by your heart. Obviously, most people, unfortunately, don't have those choices, are not in that situation, but it's something that's aspirational. And I feel with writing, you have to enjoy the process of writing. Writing is a process. It's not just sitting down and putting words on a page. There's a lot to writing. And if you don't like the journey of writing, then it's probably not suited for you, because it can be very laborious. It's very time consumptive. It's very lonely. And it also can be very humbling.
Very
when people
much so.
give you criticism, or when your books don't sell. I mean, my good friend Harlan Coben, who is now an international mega bestseller, Harlan and I have been friends for many, many years, way before he became this big star. But one of my favorite stories with him is how many books he had to write before it finally worked. But he kept writing them. I mean, he was selling, a couple thousand copies for the first 10 books, 10, okay? And then finally something clicked and it happened. Now look at it. Yeah. Netflix shows, everything imagine. And so it's the Harlan Cobens of the world and the John Grishams of the world. Obviously, everyone's not going to reach their level, but there are plenty of levels between where low and where they are, that you can be a successful writer, make a living out of it, and enjoy it and do well.
Harlan's the nicest guy, huh? He's such a nice guy. He's like, there's no ego that I can see on that guy. He's very humble, and he's very giving with his time.
He's self-deprecating. He's generous, and he's real. That's the best word. Harlan's a real guy.
When you wrote your first novel in college, did you go back and, because you had such kind of an epiphany with the Grisham novel, did you go back and try to study that book of like, okay, what about this engaged me, or what did he do that hooked me? Or did you start going through and like reading books about writing or anything like that?
I didn't read any books about writing. When I first started writing that book, I was still in college and heading to med school soon. But what I did do is, after college, and I had taken a year to get my master's before med school, I got a master's in science education from Columbia in New York City. While I was doing that master's in the city, I decided to take a writing course. I'd heard, and I wish I could remember, I don't know, somehow I had heard about a writing workshop that was in Harlem.
Like creative writing?
Yeah, creative writing workshop that was being taught by these very well-established people. And, and I've always been a fearless guy. And I said, let me give this a try. Totally like not what people know me for. But I said, I'm going to go and do this thing. I'm a peon, right? These guys
put yourself out there.
Yeah, because these guys who were in the class, they've been writing, they were English majors, whatever, creative. And here I was, this science guy, gonna go into there, but I didn't care. And so that going there and learning some basics about writing, how to hook, how to transition, some of the strategies of engaging people. So that's where I really learned more. And then when I went back to the novel I had written in college, I then was able to edit it with a different lens It still obviously was far from perfect, but now it had more of the rhythm that the books I had enjoyed, like the Grishams of the world, Dominic Dunn, who I loved. I now understood kind of how they did some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you had a pretty substantial period of time where you were writing, nonfiction and becoming very successful in that. So when you got back and started writing the unspoken, do you feel like all of that other, nonfiction writing somehow helped inform that, or was it geez, how do I go back to doing this again?
Yeah, what a good question. So the nonfiction stuff is so linear sometimes, right?
Sure.
It's so kind of like, here's the research. I got to take this research, translate it in language, and communicate it in a way that the layperson can digest it and use it, and they enjoy the book. What I'm getting from the layperson in a nonfiction sense is I'm getting them to enjoy the information and to enjoy the results the information can provide when they implement it in their lives.
Right.
Very different from what I'm trying to do in fiction, which is I want you to enjoy the story, the
narrative
arc of the story, the narrative, the arc of the characters, the plot twist. So it's extremely different. So in that sense, I'd probably say that the only way my nonfiction really informed my fiction, believe it or not, is discipline.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right. And nonfiction has to be very disciplined. And you have to kind of structure and follow, and you just got to be disciplined in how you write. And I think that has taught me how to be a very disciplined writer. I write very easily. I don't knock on wood. I keep knocking on wood here. I don't have writer's block ever.
Yep, me neither. I don't believe it exists.
Well, I feel like, Bob Parker, the great Bob Parker, once said, and I do the same thing thanks to him, he never stops writing a chapter. Back up. Bob Parker never runs out of ideas, or didn't. He never ran out of ideas before he ended the chapter. So he always made sure he still had something left in the tank.
Right. Something to start the next day on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do the same thing. I don't like, oh my goodness, I'm out of ideas, end of writing today. I will sit there until I know where I want to go. And then I'm going to stop because I know where I can go. And it's also because, writing is just momentum. Right?
Yeah, totally. It's momentum and discipline.
That's right.
It's exactly a daily habit.
That's right. That's exactly right. Writers write.
They do. And that's why, again, where I think it's so analogous with exercise. It's, you do it every day. So it becomes a habit, and then that habit becomes a lifestyle, and then you don't think about it again. And I think about that with other jobs as well. It's like, so many jobs people think about, I'm saving money so I can retire at 65. And I never even think about retiring from either fitness or from writing. Like it's inconceivable to me. It's like, well, this is what sustains me. Why would I ever retire from that? And that's such a good place to be in. That means you really love those two things.
Well, I always say that I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world because the jobs that I do don't feel like work, and I will do them forever. People say, well, when are you going to retire? How much more do you do? What do you mean retire from what?
What the hell am I going to do when I retire?
I mean, I'm doing what I enjoy to do, and I'm still living life, right? It's different if I had a job where I was on the road, half the year, I couldn't see my family. No, I have writing. If you can make a career out of writing, it is one of the most rewarding things you can do. Now, could you make more money doing other things? Absolutely. But it's not just about the money. It's about the entire picture. It's about you being autonomous, having control of your schedule, right? I have periods of the year where if I'm not in my writing mode, guess what? I do whatever I want to do. I go to sleep when I want to, based on my family, but I go to sleep when I want to. I wake up when I want to. No one says, hey, you got to punch in the clock. So we as writers are very blessed if we can really write and make it a profession, right? I mean, it's a blessing to be able to do that. And I didn't choose writing because I said, geez, I want to try to find the fastest way to make $1 million. I chose writing because I knew I loved it. I felt like I could become good at it and entertain people. And who knows, maybe I can make a living out of it.
Yeah. And like, I advise people if they go into writing for the money, then just to stop immediately, because, it's a brutal industry. And it's interesting with you because I think, you do have, you've established, a name over the years for sure. That wasn't associated with fiction, but still a name. So when you got to that point and you were talking to your editors that you wanted, that you wanted to do fiction, and then you said there was a little bit of a pushback. Was there any discussion? I mean, because it's interesting because, I think, first of all, the name helps you establish fiction, maybe more so than, had you not had that name. But was there any discussion of like, maybe we'll publish you under a different name, or was there any of that kind of talk ever?
Never.
Yeah.
And they probably maybe wanted to have that talk, but they know it wouldn't work.
Right.
Because
you want your name.
Yeah. And you know what? I tell you why also they probably didn't have that conversation, because from their mind, and publishers think about marketing because they got to sell.
Right.
From their mind, they probably said to themselves, geez, well, he's got this huge fan base for his nonfiction. We don't want to hide him. We want to see whether or not we can bring over some of those nonfiction readers into his fiction life. And so in order to do that, we need his name. It's funny because ironically, I had so many arguments over the years, and I finally won a few years ago with my publisher saying, you got to stop putting me on books. Like every cover, I can't be on the cover of every single book. And we'd have these big meetings and this back and forth. So, and people were surprised by that. But yes, I, the author, unlike other authors, was fighting to get off the cover.
Why is that?
Well, because I feel like the work should speak for itself. Yeah. I really feel that. And that's the purest to me. I want you to want to read this book and to enjoy the book, not because it's Dr. Ian. I want you to do it because of what's produced here. Their thinking was, you are the magnet to the book. And I said, well, I don't know if I need to be the magnet. I think that enough people will find the book. They can still see my name on the cover, but do they need to see me doing this? I mean, every freaking time? No. And so I finally won and got them to put it on the back of the book.
And so sales plummeted.
No, they didn't. They did, which is, it did not plummet actually. And I said to them, see, I told you.
Right.
But we went to the back of the book. Not a problem. And so I think what typically grabs people is, that's why I said I love the title of your book. Titles grab people. They grab people. I love titling books. I love packaging books. I don't like just write. I love a book package. What it looks like. What is the image?
What's the font used? Yep.
What is the font? The color? I'm into all of that. Now, a lot of authors don't really care about that, by the way. They just think my job is just to write the book. And I couldn't disagree more. I think an author has to be in tune with his entire creation. And part of the art is the presentation of your creation. People have to be attracted to the package to want to open it up.
Right. Well, and not only that, but you as the author are one part of a team that gets a book onto a bookshelf, and everybody else is equally important. And without that team, it doesn't happen. And you can't be precious as the author. Like, you have to be a team player, and you have to have those discussions about the art and the book cover, but also respect the fact that, this marketing person is a marketing person. They're getting paid to do that. And that's not what I know how to do. So I'm going to defer to their judgment. So I think a lot of writers tend to be like, well, no, I'm not going to make those changes, or I'm not going to play here because, I've done my job. I wrote the book, and it's so much bigger than that.
I am 100% against that. I think that is a zero-sum game to play. I think that you need to be involved at all levels of the book. The real work starts after you write the book, actually. That's when the real work starts. Being able to make sure the package is right and the marketing plan is right and you're getting to your readers. That's where the work is. You got to promote it. You have to promote it. It's not that you have to be a salesman. People don't like the word salesman, but you have to convince someone why they want to read your book versus 10,000 others that are on the shelf in the bookstore. And so I believe that one of the biggest mistakes that authors make is they divorce themselves in a highbrow manner, that they're above. That stuff is not mine. I'm above that. That's wrong. You need to know soup to nuts how to create a book and how to put it out there and what the efforts are in the departments that are doing it for you or with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. So is your proportion of time now being spent on fiction greater than ever before, or is it,
Well,
does it
yeah.
ebb and flow?
No, so my fiction time now is increased because I'm now committed to a yearly book schedule for
Oh,
fiction.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I do nonfiction in April, I do fiction in the fall, and I plan on doing that for the next several years. I got energy in me, and I got tons of ideas, so why not keep going? And I've now figured out how to balance my time allotment and my energy allotment, when to take breaks from everything. And I
Mhm.
have other projects I do that are good because it allows me to take that mental break from writing and thinking about either one, right? The last book, Wolf Point, that series, the Ash Kane series, has now been optioned to become a TV show.
That's
And
great.
so, yeah, so now there's a new excitement for me that is related to the books, but not actually sitting down and writing the book. So that's a nice pressure relief, a nice vacation. And then I dig back into my stories.
So when you say fiction in the fall, first of all, I love that. Does that mean you're writing a book in just a few months?
I'm ahead. COVID, one of the
Oh,
few
you
blessings,
stockpiled your writing.
one of the few blessings of a very difficult, horrific time we've had is that I was very productive. And I announced on my Instagram early on, hey guys, there's so much we can't control. Focus on what you can control, be productive. So
Yep.
I wrote 2.5 books during COVID.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. I was just home writing. I hadn't been home. I had not been home that much in maybe 10 years.
Yeah. Yep.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I was finding places in my house and things that I'd never seen before because I'd been on the road traveling and touring and stuff. So COVID was good to me in that respect. And so, yeah, I probably spend 2 months thinking of a book in my head. And the amount of time it takes to actually put it to paper is probably, I'd say 3 months. I can put it to paper.
That's
Get
impressive.
that. Yeah, I could bet. Well, I'm a great typist. I'm a very fast typist. So some people are finger typers.
Yeah.
I'm a real not look.
Oh, you're old school. Yeah.
Well, one of the best courses I ever had in high school that I despised at the time was typing. I went to a Catholic high school and we had to take typing. Mrs. Corpassi was my typing teacher. And here I was, this big jock basketball player sitting there typing. I'm like, guys don't type, back in the day, guys don't type, blah, blah. But I had to take it. It was a requirement. And of course, being competitive, okay, fine, I'm going to take it. I want to be the best typist in the class. And so my WHAM, words a minute, was really high. I got like 62 WHAM.
Yeah. That's funny.
But guess what? That skill of typing really helped my career. When I got to college, talk about procrastination, I was never worried about getting the paper typed. I could type a 4-page, 5-page paper. I can do that in an hour and a half. I'm done.
So we can trace all your success as a fiction writer back to two teachers in high school. The one who taught you typing and your English teacher. Those were the motivations. And now look where you are.
Bierbauer and Corpassi.
Yeah.
I keep in touch with Mrs. Bierbauer.
Oh, really?
I don't know where she is. I know she drove a big old blue Mercedes back in the day, so she's probably retired somewhere in Florida. But Mrs. Bierbauer and her husband, she's now remarried. Now she's Arsenal. I keep in touch with them.
That's awesome.
They read my book. She reads my book. She loves my books.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to do a quick storytelling and then wrap up.
Okay.
So this is the fun part where we just pick a book and pick a sentence, and we just go back and forth with a couple sentences and see where it goes with us. So I have 3 books here for you to choose from. I have Donna Tartt's The Little Friend. These are all novels. Stephen James, I don't know if you know him, Every Deadly Kiss. He writes a few different series. He's great. And The Lost Weekend by Charles Jackson, which I think was written probably in the 30s or the 40s. And it's a really depressing read about an alcoholic, but a great book. So choose one of those.
I'm going to go with Stephen James.
All right. And choose a sentence a page between 1 and 600.
I'm going to choose 253.
Okay. And that's the beginning of a chapter. And a sentence between, say, 1 and 5.
I'm going to choose 3.
Okay. So I'm going to read this, and then you just give me a couple sentences of whatever, and then I'll do a couple, and then after a couple minutes, I'll call. We'll just see where it goes. The car he was driving was on its way off the shoulder and into the ditch. It's a weird sentence. The car he was driving was on its way off the shoulder and into the ditch.
Sure. He had no idea that at the bottom of the ditch was another car. that had had the same fate. But that car wasn't so fortunate, full of dents, half burned out, and what he thought might be an extremity sticking out of one of the windows.
He got out of the car to see if his assumptions were true. The first thing he noticed was the mud that his feet sank deep into. Deep enough it was hard to even move forward, but he made it to the other car. The windshield was cracked, and just beyond that, on the driver's side window, he could see for sure it was a hand.
Which made him think right away, how does a car get down into this ditch and for it to be here this long for no one to recognize? There were no other tracks in the mud. There were no signs that anyone had been there to investigate. There was no sign of life whatsoever. But someone had to have known that not only was this car missing, but the person whose hand it was missing too.
The other way he could tell that nobody had been down here to disturb the scene was the enormous engagement ring on the finger of the hand sticking through the window. There was a woman inside that car, and she was obviously wealthy, and nobody had bothered to come by to take that ring. He took a deep breath and pulled the door open, not knowing exactly what was inside.
And as he opened the door and finally saw her face, and despite the amount of time that had definitely eroded some of her beauty, he realized that she had once been a very beautiful woman, and someone had once been luckily engaged to her. But then his instincts kicked in. Where was the fiancé? And had the fiancé known that she was here, or was he part of the reason why she was here?
There was no two ways about it. The front seat was a complete mess. He stifled his gag reflex as he leaned over to see if he could find anything to tell him who this person was. But there was no purse. There was no identification that he could see of any kind. He rifled through the glove compartment, and there wasn't even a registration. There was only one thing. There was an envelope on the passenger side floor. It was sealed, and on the outside it said, "To whomever finds me."
He thought long and hard before deciding whether or not he wanted to touch the envelope, let alone open it. He knew that this was, in the worst case scenario, a crime scene. And he had seen enough crime shows on television to know that the contamination of evidence could completely ruin an investigation. So he thought for a moment. It was only within arm's reach. Should he take the envelope and see what she had to say? Or should he back up himself and call for help?
But he knew himself. After 40 years, he knew himself. He was going to read that note, God damn it. He was already down here. His own car was wrecked. He couldn't save this woman, but he could read the note.
So he opened the envelope, trying to be as careful as possible not to bother fingerprints, but knowing that that was futile at this point because he could not see where the other fingerprints might have been. As soon as he opened the note, he was shocked. It wasn't a letter. It was just a solitary key.
Okay, we're going to call it there. I think we co-write that book together.
That was good, man. I've never done that before. That was fun.
It's a little scary, isn't it?
That was fun. Well, the fun part is that you're tag teaming, so I got to play off you. I don't know where you're going, so you're making me think fast. That was really good. That's a good
right.
fun game.
So it has the roots in improv, right? And the main kind of thing in improv is like you yes and everything. So you don't say, no, there wasn't a key. It was this. It's like, okay, yes and it's fun because you're very visual, like you were saying, and I am too. And you can just see this. And if you can see it, it's easier to see what happens next for me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, listen, buddy, it was great talking to you. You're a blast. It'd be great to hang out with you sometime, but I really appreciate you taking the time to be on this, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I had a good time, and keep doing your writing. I'm gonna keep doing my writing.
Absolutely.
Book 3 for the Ash Kane series is already finished.
That's awesome.
It's in the editor's hands. So I hope people will get a chance to check out Ash Kane. It's a lot of fun.
Congrats on all the success, man. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
All right, man. Take care.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right.
That was my conversation with Dr. Ian. I told you were going to enjoy it. I sure did. I thought that was great. And I thought we had, in particular, really good energy during the short storytelling. I think, that's always a difficult part of the show to get to. And I think usually the most fun, but with different people, you have different connections of energy. And I felt like we had a good connected shared energy about where that story was going. You probably already know a lot about Dr. Ian, but if you want to know more, just go to driansmith.com and you can read all about his works that he has out. And if you want to know more about me, just go to carterwilson.com and please subscribe to my newsletter because I work really hard at it. So that's it for now. More episodes coming out soon. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.